Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. This is Thursday, February 17, 2022. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at, in close quotes, unprecedented moves by President George Manuel Weah to etch his name in the annals of presidential history of Liberia. I have with me presenting those unprecedented moves, Mr. Wilmot Kunney, his FOL Chief Political Analyst. Mr. Kunney, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Always a pleasure to be here.
It is also worth mentioning that he is also called CDC Pape. Also joining us to list for us the unprecedented moves by President Weah is the unrepentant, unabashed, and unapologetic sedition, Mr. Jerome Gayman. Jerome, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Obviously, thank you very much. I am not here to apologize. I'm here to state the facts. And the history is going to bear us out that this is the greatest president you have ever had since 1822, February 6th.
Mr. Jerome Gayman is also the co-host of FOL program On Point. Next, we want to introduce a Unity Party diaspora executive, Mr. Josh Sir Preston Lobbo. He's joining us all the way from Arizona. Mr. Lobbo, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and thank you to my fellow panelists. I look forward to a fruitful conversation with you this afternoon.
George is a diehard Unity Party supporter. He's here to respond to the unprecedented moves that will be listed by our colleagues. Next, we have joining us from the City of Brotherly Love, a product of Waplo Institute, FOL political analyst, Mr. Mohammed Sherif. Mr. Sherif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always great to be here.
Mr. Sherif is an independent. He has no leaning with any political party for that matter. He's going to be here to independently analyze the unprecedented moves by President George Weah. Last but definitely not the least is our public policy analyst, Mrs. Carl Famula. Carl, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Always my pleasure to be here.
Carl is also a Unity Party partisan, and we are here tonight. So without further ado, I want to give the floor to Mr. Wilmot Kunney and Jerome Gayman to list for us. You see, let's give it a background. Liberia have had president since 1847. So most of the time you hear that this president or that president is the best. From what we are hearing, President George Weah have done things that have never been done in the history of Liberia presidency. Mr. Kunney, Mr. Gayman, your turn.
Well, Dennis, thank you for having me again. And honestly, since my coming here on this platform, this is really one of the easiest assignments for me. The task is very simple because it's clear the facts are there to support what we are about to present. Liberia, like any other country, like most countries, have lists of people who have had the opportunity to serve the country. But among those people, there are people who come to actually make their name in history. People who, by the kind of leadership they provide to the country, kind of crystallize their name in the history of the country. So for almost 4 years, we have been observing the leadership of President George Manuel Weah, and we are beginning to think that given some of the actions the president has taken during his leadership, he is on the road of etching his name in the annals of Liberian history. And so what are some of these things? For example, some of the unprecedented things that Mane has done. We talk about making public education at a higher level tuition free. Never in the history of Liberia that any Liberian president, any Liberian administration has taken on the issue of public education at the highest level, at the university level, public universities and public community colleges to that level where their students are not required to pay tuition, completely tuition free. And we appreciate that because some of us here on this platform are students of some of these public institutions. We know how tuition used to be very difficult during our school days. We could not even afford tuition. And if you check the public institutions, the people that go there are merely poor people children, market women children, ordinary people children. So for the president to come to initiate and to establish a policy making public universities and public colleges tuition free is unprecedented, and we are very convinced that history will remember that gesture. The next thing the president did, you say we'll talk for 3 minutes, so the next thing the president did that is unprecedented, Dennis, is the decriminalization of free speech. I'm saying it with a passion. I was in the security, you know that, and we are aware how various Liberian government has used this aspect, this criminalization of free speech to curtail the rights of journalists to go after people. We're talking about sedition laws. We're talking about criminal malevolence. We're talking about laws simply as insulting the president. Even President Thurman utilized those laws to get even with his opponent. Even President Talbot, utilized those laws. Today, due to the leadership of President Weah, through the passage of the Kamara Abdullah Press Freedom Act, all of those things have been decriminalized. You can say anything you want to say in Liberia about the president, you're not going to bear criminal penalty. We think that is unprecedented. He is the first Liberian president to do this. So we think that deserves a mark in history. Then the other thing we think that will place George Weah in the annals of Liberian history is his commitment to road connectivity. This commitment is not only based on road programs that he himself has designed and is implementing, but also implementing road programs that were part of previous administration. I mean, he has the heart of Liberians to the point where even if the road projects that were started by previous administration, he remained committed to those road projects, and he's adding to those road projects. That is unprecedented. In Liberia, one president comes, he throws the activities of the other president away and try to start their own thing. So we believe that the combination of all of these factors really will put George Weah in a very good place in Liberian history. And this is what we believe. And many Liberians, not only us, there are thousands of Liberians that feel that way. Just those three things. Macaulay will come and bring the other three, but I just wanted to limit on presentation to those three things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, comrade. First of all, our sympathy, we want to, if the CEO allow us to have a few seconds of silence for the departing of our fellow compatriot, Dr. Sawyer, to the Sawyer family, and to the Republic of Liberia. We have lost a great man, and I think 3 seconds of silence, if the CEO allow us, I think it is showing due respect for his contribution to building our statehood. Thank you very much. Obviously, we tend to argue things that are not factual. So today there will be no argument here because what we are presenting are actual facts, numbers, and nobody can argue it. You can make an opinion. What some of you guys are going to do, you're going to have an opinion, but you cannot deny the facts. Now, I want to look at the return of our people, our brothers, our sisters. Let's talk about the bicentennial. I know there was a friend of mine who called me and told me that the bicentennial should not be celebrated because there were people in Liberia before the settlers came, and the bicentennial or the return of our brothers and sisters from the state is not historic in nature. We agree that there were people there when our brothers and sisters came, but we want to talk about the establishment of the state. that is called Liberia. So our bicentennial from February 6, 2022, 1822 to February 6, 2022, 200 years of struggle. We are working. And by the president establishing the fact that the bicentennial, naming the year of the return, to enhance our portfolio, to openly bring together the nation, the world, to see who we are in the midst of our struggle, it is unprecedented. I also want to talk about, my colleague talked about the free tuition. Something unprecedented happened 2 weeks ago, almost a month ago. Representative Thomas Fowler introduced a bill that passed the House and now headed to the Senate, that the free tuition, the wide fee, the free tuition that we are talking about, that it become codified, that when President Weah leaves, that it does not become a water under the bridge. So that is also unprecedented. So we are talking about the executive mansion, the return to the executive mansion. The previous administration, I think Mr. Lobbo knows this very well because his godfather, the former vice president, said the billions of dollars that came through, they squandered it. I think whatever they did with that, but he used that word squander. President Weah came back after 12 years of squandering all the money that was supposed to go into that state house. He brought it back to the national discourse. And this gone week, you saw on the grounds of the executive mansion, the whole world is celebrating. And I heard my homeboy Martin says, I can't wait to get on tour. So ladies and gentlemen, these are things that cannot be argued. George Weah, President Weah, is in the history books.
And your last point?
The last point, to reduce the presidential term limit. My good friend John Lobbo here, Darrell Dillon, Cummings, they were campaigning across the nation to defeat the initiative. They are saying, in fact, I think it was John Noble, if I'm not mistaken, one of them said, this is a trick. If we pass this, George Weah is going to use this to restart his presidential tenureship. So we are going to defeat this, even though it means well for Liberia that the term of the president from 12 years, 2 terms, to 10 years, 2 terms, or from 6 years to 5 years. Mr. Nubo and the opposition said it was a trickery, and they wanted it to be defeated. Ladies and gentlemen, nowhere in the history of Liberia where the president has said, I want to cut my own term limit. I want to reduce my own salary for the next generation. That were supposed to be supporting us, they fought against it and they defeated it. This, my friend, history will bear us out that George Weah have done something that no African leader has done. When you look around in West Africa,
we're hearing feedback there. Please mute yourself if you're not talking. All right, thank you, Mr. Gayman.
Yeah, let me land here. When you look at what's happening in the West African region, every president from Guinea, Burkina Faso, to the Ivory Coast, everybody is doing all they can to extend their stay in office. Weah is the only one that is doing all he can to limit himself from the longevity or the illegal longevity of the leadership in the African region.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. 6 unprecedented moves by President Weah to etch his name in the annals of Liberian history. Mr. Sherif, I want you to respond first.
Well, that is a lot.
Pick few. The rest will pick other ones.
Yeah, I got it. That the supporters of George Weah and the CDC government have put on the table. But let's dissect some of what these guys are talking about from an independent perspective. They are talking about, George Weah as the best Liberian, the best president since 1847. Now, keep in mind, these guys don't have any data. They don't have any. They didn't put for anything. They're going by their gut instinct. We say that he is the best president. See, that's not how. I watched your show last night. Cole was guessing that she did a terrific job with Dr. The soon to be Dr. Carr, I believe, did a terrific job. So when you're talking like this, you need to put forward, okay, some evidence, right? What is your evidence? What are you basing this on? So I don't think the supporters of Mr. Weah have enough evidence, and I think that where they weaken, where they really weaken their point is, all these different superlatives, right? The best, the greatest. These are superlatives that when you begin to use those superlatives, your assessment of your leader becomes disingenuous. So let's look at the bicentennial, for example. It was not really. I don't think this is anything that was really thought through. So we're saying Liberia is 200 years old. Is that what they're saying? Or are they saying that 200 years ago, the first Liberians came into inhabit, or Liberia was discovered 200 years ago? All of which is really faulty, right? So if you're going to accentuate this event, so what are you what are you telling the rest of the Liberian people? What are you telling my people from the 12th and the 13th century or before then, people who came from the great ancient empires, the Sudanic empires, to the coast of Liberia? So what are you telling them? Are they important? Are we going to have a time where this government is also going to have a celebration, an occasion for my ancestors, your ancestors, our other ancestors? So Liberian history has always been this truncated history. We've always picked, pieces of our history. There are Liberians who, and for this very reason, Dennis, I'm going to bring this up. There are Liberians who, for example, don't know where their ancestors are from. A lot of Liberians somehow have this belief that either, to me, I feel like, that they either came down from, their grand ancestors came down from heaven or germinated from the face of the earth. So we always take this sort of truncated history. So we took the bicentennial. Why do you accentuate the bicentennial over other things, right? So what about the other Liberians who were there before the arrival of our brothers and sisters from the United States and from other parts, and not just the United States, from other parts of the world, like the Caribbean and so on and so forth. So this is not really thought through. They should have had some historians to assist them with this celebration. I think that wasn't done. So this was an opportunity missed. In 1976, the United States of America celebrated its bicentennial, right? Because 200 years, in 1976, the United States independence was 200 years old. So in 2047, what celebration Liberia is going to have? It'll be interesting to see. For me, I'm thinking now, for those who will be around, to see in 2047 what kind of celebration that Liberia is going to have now that George Weah have had this, big and elaborate celebration of just, wasted resources for all of this, right? The other thing is, and the CDC supporters, my brothers from the CDC talked about the president reducing his own term. And for this, I think that I've always given George Weah enormous credit for this, and I'm going to stay within that lane. He didn't start with him though. Ellen Johnson started in her last, but this was her final term. She knew she wasn't going to be hurt by it. in any way, shape, or form. So she kicked the can down the road. George Weah picked this up, and I have to commend him for this. And one of the things that I would like to say is that going back to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, I probably want to commend him for something else, which is there was a dangerous proposal among the perhaps 24 proposals that were given to Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. One of the proposals was to turn Liberia into a Christian theocratic dictatorship by this proposal was championed by the current Vice President Joel Howard Taylor, a very dangerous politician. And this did not see the light of day. And I commend Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and the legislature at the time for striking that out. That being said, the proposals that made it now, George Weah, to his very credit, did very, very well. So in the interest of time, I hope that I can come back to talk about the other issues. But in the interest of time, I think I should stop there. So if I have to agree with the supporters of the president on that point, I have to give them some credit.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. George Preston Lobbo. George, you heard Mr. Gayman and Mr. Kunney on those 6 unprecedented moves by President Weah. Your response?
First and foremost, Dennis, I want to say thank you very much. The CDC government itself was never prepared to lead a nation. This is why the government have been in existence for 4 years running, and they still come to national discourse with no data, no facts. It is a pity and it is a shame. This is the only government that the Minister of Finance will tell us that the budget will be in the neighborhood of this, around there, somewhere around here. Love, Mr. Kunney, and to my good friend Jerome Gayman. Let us be factual here today. I heard you talking about the facts. I find it to be laughable when I heard Kunney talking about road connectivity. How can you boast of road connectivity when the only government that paved more roads since independence is the Unity Party government? Over 650 kilometers of resurfaced and well-paved roads. Let us not forget what you are boasting of today are roads, like you said, that we left ongoing, constructions ongoing. So again, I will say this to you, Mr. Kunney, for you to beat the Unity Party government, President George Weah will have to pave nothing less than 49.5 kilometers of road every year. And the last time I checked, he is nowhere around that number. It's sad that we'll come to this discussion with no data. And that is the most pitiful thing about this conversation. But I want to speak on something very interesting. The issue of the free public tuition. My sister Cole is the policy advisor or policy analyst here. Let me be very clear for the sake of our audience. There have been no policy enacted, signed into law by the CDC government, which declares free public tuition for higher level education. It was a pronouncement. However, for the CDC, accomplishment means promising to do, because this is a government of wanting to do, going to be doing, will soon be doing. Let me come to something very interesting that I heard from you today. On the issue of the reduction of presidential term, you know, it's so funny. The United Party under Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf sponsored a conference that was held in Banga, where those recommendations were made. In actuality, the UP government under Madam Sirleaf wanted 4 years and not 5 years. President Weah was seeking 5 years. Now, let's be very, very clear here. One of the reasons why Gayman ain't mad at me is true. I went to Liberia and campaigned vigorously. I will use the word vehemently and defeated the government, absolutely. And the reason was simple. Our argument to the Liberian people was that, do you trust this government? This is a government that is not honest, that is not credible. And what I wanted to do for you guys tonight is this. The Liberian people made a decision in the referendum. The fact that the government have refused to even make the referendum result public tells you what happened. Our people trusted our judgment. It is clear. We have seen what have happened around us. in the Côte d'Ivoire, and in Guinea. We saw what happened when those presidents changed the constitution, changed their term limits. What happened? Alassane Ouattara today is president. We saw Alpha Condé was president. Over 200 Guineans died as a result of massive protests. We were not in a position to put ourselves in that particular situation. However, we made a case to our Liberian people, and they listened to us, and therefore we defeated the referendum. And I'm proud any given day, Mr. Gayman. If I stop in Florida, you don't want to see me for that. That is a victory every day I will put on my resume any given day. But let me help you guys with something you left out today. What I think you guys should have talked about today that make President Weah special is the fact that he's the only Liberian president who has dropped 4 singles in 1 year. No other Liberian president in the midst of extreme poverty have taken the job of the presidency lightly. Not only that, he is the only president under his watchful eyes that 16 billion of his country money will go missing and not yet to be accounted for. Those are things that when you grade him for, absolutely I will not disagree with you. So again, I want to come to the issue of the bicentennial. Let me be very clear, folks. That whole idea, we all know, derived from a group of Liberians in Georgia. However, the government got involved, which we appreciate. Like Mr. Sherif said, it was an opportunity missed. And I hope, Mr. Gayman, you people, Dennis Jah, will post some of the pictures from the bicentennial so we can see how happy the Seditians were. Because that itself will tell you what it meant for them. I will say this to you. As we are going to continue down the line because of time, I will be looking forward to you people providing us data of substance to make your case. But until then, on the issue of free public tuition, I will quote the former president of the University of Liberia. The president testified before the Liberian Senate that since the pronouncement of that free public university, all major public universities and community colleges have been running at a deficit. So when we speak, let us provide facts to this conversation. So how can we give credit? It's a pronouncement. If it is based on pronouncement, then I think President Weah, he's the most accomplished. He's the only soccer player, the former world best, who under his leadership, the Lone Star can't even play on their own stadium. So we can go on and on. I will leave it there for time, Dennis, when I return to provide more substance to the conversation.
Thank you. Let me bring Carl in the conversation to respond to the 6 unprecedented moves by President Weah. Carl, your turn.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mohammed and George, for your rebuttals. I'm going to start with public policy issues. Education reform is one of the most important things. It's dear to my heart. We have an issue, though, saying that tuition is free and fair and not having mechanisms in place to make sure that that happens is problematic. So there was no plan. It just kind of, comes out of your mouth, and then there's nothing to talk about how we're going to fund public education, which is already grossly underfunded. I mean, the preschool that my 4-year-old goes to is better funded than the University of Liberia. She's 4 years old. She attends an institution that's privately owned and is better funded than the University of Liberia. It's ridiculous. I mean, universities have budgets the size of the Republic of Liberia's budget and much, much more. Compare Liberia's budget to University of Georgia budget. So we have a problem with people saying things and not knowing how things are done. There's no plan on how we're going to fund education. So part of the issue is small-mindedness and thinking very, very small, not understanding how things are done and thinking you can just say something and it happens. The budget for the University of Liberia since the president made that announcement has been reduced, right? So 2021, it was 17.2 million. 2020 was 17.2 million. It's now gone down to 16 million. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Internal Affairs budget increased from 6.3 million to 20.8 million. And it's interesting because we're talking about unprecedented increase in an area where now we're going and basically campaigning, talking about we're doing county tours and all this kind of stuff with financial resources that are public and could be better used on healthcare in the interior or education in the interior. So that increase has been used now to finance entourages visiting and smiling with people and building temporary solar light poles that go out after a few weeks. So that's unfortunate. To get to this, this Press Freedom Act, of course, and I have a copy of it here. It's not really something that the president sponsored. Let's be honest. This is not an initiative of the CDC government, but it is. And it's a little bizarre because I don't even think that the government understands this Press Freedom Act. They think that it only applies to the press, but really, it's retracting certain sections of the 1978 Penal Code. So Section 11.11, which talks about criminal liability if you talk against the president. Mo Ali, this was passed in 2019. They have harassed Mo Ali in 2020, 2021. They've harassed many private citizens for saying things. All of the sedition, that's been violated. Costa was, had to flee the country because he was accused of sedition. And that was after this act was passed. That's just, it's okay to say these things, but it's not being implemented. So you say, oh yeah, we champion this law, but then you're harassing citizens for doing exactly what this law says you shouldn't do. I'm going to also skip over some of these things that I was going to say because my colleagues have already said it, but I want to talk about history. I want to talk about history and the importance of, not telling lies, on the people whose shoulders we're standing on. Coming up and saying that in the last 3 years, there's been more development, more road connectivity. We're not stupid, right? Liberia's history is recorded, it's documented. President Tubman is responsible for most of Liberia's modern infrastructure. And if you're going to talk about a developmental president, nobody before or after Tubman accomplished what Tubman accomplished, right? So President Tubman, from 1944 to 1971, he built basically all of our rail and road infrastructure. He was the first to pave roads. He built all of our capital cities, put up all of these airfields all over the country. So you're talking about Voinjama, that used to be modern, right, at one point, Sanakole. All of the capitals of all of the counties were modernized with paved roads, with infrastructure. Buchanan had running water, electricity, Grand Cape, Robertsport, all of the coastal cities and all of the capitals of the counties were modernized and had infrastructure. On top of that, you're talking about obvious things like the Capitol building, Monrovia City Hall, the National Cultural Center that we call Kenneja, Duker International Hotel, which was the first 5-star hotel in Africa, not just Liberia, but on the continent. So this man modernized Liberia with direct foreign investment. We're talking about bong mines. We're talking about LAMCO projects. We're talking about creating concessions that were mutually beneficial, employed Liberians, educated Liberians, and brought the standard of living of those Liberians that were in those concession areas up to international standards. So at that time, if you grew up in bong mines, you were in America. If you grew up in Yakepa, you were in America. Because why? Those were things that president required of concessionaires. There hasn't been anything, close to that Weah has done. So to say that you got to respect people that came before you. If the reason that they lie on the past is to justify mediocrity, to justify, trying to do minuscule things. And then so what you're going to do is erase the giants whose shoulders you stand on and say, hey, nobody's done anything since 1847 and we're here. Which brings me to the last point. Our centennial, and this is why it's important to have informed human beings and not a bunch of bootlickers surrounding you. You need to have informed human beings. This is humiliating. In 1947, we had a 2-year celebration from 1947 to celebrate our centennial, our nation's centennial. This is a true Whig Party government that we indigenous Liberians like to condemn. They did not celebrate the centennial from the time ACS arrived. They celebrated the centennial based on the independence of the Republic of Liberia from the tyranny of the American Colonization Society, which was a philanthropic organization with, that believed that these races should oversee what we do. They created a constitution to protect us from the tyranny of white supremacy. In 1847, the United States still owned slaves. In 1847, the United States was still practicing chattel slavery. Human beings were property. So what is tremendous and important about Liberia is not that settlers came, because settlers went to Sierra Leone, settlers went to Nigeria, settlers went all over the place. The reason Liberia is important is because we dared to assert our independence and self-determination when our brethren were still in bondage in North America. And for our president to stand up at our centennial celebration and give credit to our independence, to the United States of America that did not even recognize our independence until after their Civil War, when they finally somewhat freed their slaves and put them into, a different type of slavery. But that's a different story. That's an ahistorical perspective. And that is what we did with the celebration was we humiliated ourselves. And the rest of, I'm not done, just give me 1 second. The rest of the world knows our history better than we do. And that is the disgrace. If you hear the commentary coming out of the mouths of African Americans and other people who actually read, they're mocking us. And you guys are sitting here talking about this is an accomplishment. It's a disgrace, is what it is. Centennial Pavilion, 1947, not 1922.
Thank you. And before I go to Mr. Kunney and Gayman, is there any reason why nobody responded to this one? The return to the executive mansion after it was used by the Sherif and Bouakai administration as a
medium of corruption. I want to give time for aim on next round.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lobbo. I want you to respond to that 1 minute, please.
So you see, Mr. Dennis, and this is the sad part about the CDC government. When you have a government that took the code of conduct and used it as toilet papers to be talking about fighting corruption and accountability, it's difficult. Since the government came into power, there have been allotment made for the renovation of the mansion. It is true, under the Unity Party-led government, the first Chinese company that was awarded the contract to renovate the mansion, we all know what happened. The Chinese company looted the mansion and left it in a terrible condition. Then they met it. Madam Sherif got mad. So that means the job we brought you to do a job for over $10 million, less than $10 million. Now, based on the damage you caused, it will cost us now $15 million. Again, I continue to help my CDC friends. One problem they do have is their ability to understand data. Because money is appropriated in the budget, what I want you guys to show for us when we speak in terms of the money that was wasted is to be able to show what was actually disbursed. Because part of budgeting, allotment is part of the process. But was it disbursed? Because we knew that after the Chinese company, the Unity Party government had an audit that was done. The current deputy speaker was on that board. The reports are there. And I want to be very clear here to my CDC friends. Look, it is a good thing that the office of the president, the executive mansion, where the president should go to work and reside if he wants to, that President Weah, on his watch, that this renovation will be completed. However, to my CDC friends, according to what we know, the work is less than 60% complete. However, I want to thank you guys for that effort. But for you to say, based on the executive mansion, he is the best president, then what will we say to Tottenham who built the mansion? So what will we say? So I don't want to reduce this conversation. I know the CDC government strive on self-gratification. However, I want to say this. Yes, under the Madam Sherif and Joseph Bouakai regime, under my Unity Party government, money was appropriated for that building. And that is why I've always called on the need for an audit. And if we feel that anything nefarious was done, those responsible must be held fully accountable. And that is my response to
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is focused on Liberia, Tough Talking Thursday. Mr. Kunney.
Yeah, Dennis, listening to the reporters, is interesting. They all taking the directions that were clearly expected. There is no contestation about the fact, about the issue presented. All we have is spin and different arguments that we could all have for another day. The point here is what we came here to do is that, look, given what Weah is doing, he's placing his name in Liberian history. So I don't know when people talk about from 1847, he's the best president. I don't recall any of us using that kind of English here. So if you want to say it, you say it, but do not attribute it to us. But, my sister like to say people are not stupid. Yes, people are not stupid. The Liberian people are not stupid. You talk about Lamco and people in Lamco and bone mines being like they in America. But I was a question. What were they like beyond Lamco? What were they like beyond the mines, the enclave of the mining concession area? What life that the people were living? What were the life the people were living beyond the enclave of bone mining company? What were the life? They couldn't even pave the road from the company to Kakata. They couldn't do that. Limba County, as the county that operated the mine with me, completely underdeveloped. So when we're talking about the development of Liberia, we're not talking about the development of underdevelopment, where you find few shining spots in the enclaves of transnational corporation. That's not development. And I just want to make one point clear. My brother Lobbo like to come with his statistics of the Unity Party government paving 697 kilometers of road. But let me tell you, check the World Bank report, 2019-2020. The total road density of Liberia is 10,600 kilometers. Of that, only 657 is paved. So if you say you pave 697, that means you say you alone of all the administration in Liberia paved that road, your data is completely wrong. You keep talking about data. Please do not repeat that data because it is wrong. It does not exist. It does not exist. And then you go to what we said. The key word here, unprecedented. In their rebuttal, none of them has said, oh, this thing when you say Weah did, no, another person did it. No, it's not in the rebuttal. It's not in the rebuttal. And we all are students of public policy. Public policies never really achieve all of its goal in the first time it was promulgated. You go to Social Security. It took several reforms. What we're seeing, Weah is the first president in Liberian history to introduce the concept of tuition free for public colleges and universities. Tell me another president who did that. That's the argument you must bring here. Don't tell me, oh, the university underfunded. We're not here to discuss the underfunding of the university. We're talking about a program that this president introduced. Tell me, no, you're wrong. This president, another president introduced this. We talk about Weah reducing his, wanting to reduce his term in office. It started from President Seli. Seli had 12 years to do that if she wanted to do that. Seli had 12 years to do that if she wanted to do that. She didn't have no appetite to do that. The president that is on record of wanting to do that is Weah. Show me another president who wanted to do that. I think that's the direction this debate should go. It's not all of these tracking.
Let me interject before you continue. Something being unprecedented should be in the right direction, right? So it is not just for being unprecedented. So
then we can discuss the rightness or the wrongness of that direction. You understand? Right. We should discuss that. But if we say unprecedented, this is the first time it happened, the appropriate rebuttal would be, no, this is not the first time. It happened this time. It happened this other time. So don't introduce that. I mean, the appropriate rebuttal should be in that context. And you're talking about the Freedom Act. We know how Liberian journalists have been repressed from year to year with laws of libel, sedition, criminal malevolence, and other things like that. And the president introduced that bill, signed it into law. Guess what? It became a trendsetter. After Liberia signed that law into law, guess who followed? Sierra Leone followed. These are unprecedented things. Tell us another president who has done that. If you can't tell us another president who did that, then our statement is accurate. We're not here to, in that data thing we're talking, we say George Weah is the first to do this. And because he's the first to
Right.
do this,
And
he
Mr.
will
Kunney,
have a
what,
place in Liberian history.
Mr. Kunney,
So what data we can bring?
before I bring Mohammed in, so does it matter? Let's say President Weah is the first to do this, like the free speech. Does it matter whether the government live by that or not? All we want is he's the first to do it. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is, every public policy has a beginning. And the implementation may not be perfect, but this is where society develops. People, you build on it.
Wow.
We have Obamacare. Obamacare, as you have it today, is now the way it was when it was crafted. There is an improvement. That's how countries make progress. But to say, no, it was never introduced or this and that, these are things the president has introduced and I submit to you, there are more room for improvement. But even as we improve them, it will be recorded that it was George Weah that introduced this. It was George Weah that proposed this. And then you can do your improvement. So
thank you. Let me go to Mohammed before Gayman come in. Mohammed, any feedback on that?
Yeah, so I have a couple of feedback from what I've heard. So the Press Freedom Act, if I'm not mistaken, was signed in early 2019. It was in the same year that, as Cole already mentioned, as she communicated there, it was the same year that Roots FM, owned and operated by Henry Costa, was vandalized by this regime, and his equipment was seized. And so where is the equipment? So my question for these guys tonight is, where is the equipment? Why are you keeping his equipment? That's number one for you. Number two is a journalist, I think it was in the same year or maybe a year later, Zobwe Mailer was I think I followed that situation a little bit, was brutally assaulted and he died from his injuries. And this was after signing this so-called Press Freedom Act. So these are, and then Dennis, Liberia is 98. Liberia is 98 among 180 countries on the World Press Index. It's not a terrible position if you look at who they're ahead of. I mean, they're obviously Liberia, our country, is ahead of Sierra Leone and Guinea and all these, some of these countries in the sub-region. So I'm not saying that they are completely terrible under this administration, because there was a time that we all saw what Decree 88A was able to do to the lives of the Liberian people. So we've come a long way from Decree 88A to the violence that Charles Taylor unleashed on the Liberian people, including journalists. And so we've come a long way. I have to acknowledge that. So there's a difference between myself and somebody like Mr. Kunney, is that there is a recognition by those of us on this other side. If there's truth, we acknowledge, but they do not. So I'm here to tell you that I acknowledge that we've come a long way. That being said, there are troubling signs that Liberia is regressing, relapsing, because 3 years ago the country was 89th on the World Press Index, and then 2 years later it was 93, and now in 2021 it's 98. So this is going in the wrong direction. So something needs to be done, and needs to be done pretty quickly. The other thing is that we haven't mentioned, we haven't talked about, is that, this president travels a lot. You're traveling all over the place. When some of the reasons why you're traveling can be done by Zoom. Dennis, I mean, he can communicate with other African leaders in the interest of saving the country, in the interest of fiscal responsibility. You don't
Maybe that's
have
why I
to
didn't include it in the unprecedented move.
Yeah, I mean that exactly. So you don't have to travel like this, but the traveling is really unprecedented. I mean, just traveling for traveling's sake, and when they travel like that, they're taking with them millions and millions and millions of dollars,
Yeah,
resources that can be expended as our public as Cole said, resources that can be expended for, to build schools and hospitals, clinics, real roads. We're not talking about, these makeshift
yeah.
roads, real roads, connecting the interior, connecting, uh, the farming areas to the local, to the markets, to the markets so that the economy, to boost the economy. But if you're putting all that in your pocket and traveling, I think that the nation will remain in the doldrums of dysfunction for a long time to come.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Gayman before call comes in. Mr.
Well,
Gayman,
yes.
what I see here, are you listening things that President Weah did first, or are you listening things that have impact, positive impacts on the life of the people?
Well, then then you are taking us into another direction now. Then we are becoming more subjective. And we're talking about impact. Whose impact? Who define what impact is? So we are talking about a person that initiated something, that did something. You cannot deny that fact. I want to talk to my brother Lobbo here. I think Lobbo he talks about fact, but he's more of a revisionist because you remember when we talk about these things that we are talking about, he won't touch them. Instead, he's going back to correct what Ellie and his uncle Waka did wrong. He's trying to polish it to say 16 billion got lost and this and that. It wasn't on us. And I like what he introduced a new word, and it's a breaking news on the show here. He said, John Lewis, you all right. I like you. He said appropriation is not equal to disbursement. So
It's not the same.
listen to this.
It's not the same.
Listen. Yeah, people may have said we ate $10 billion. They said they gave it to us, and there's no proof that we receive it. Means that if they are not the same. John Luba is telling me that all the money that was appropriated for the repair and the renovation of the executive mansion was only on paper, but he never got it. That's what he's telling us. Mr. Lugo, you all right. You know what? You are a very smart man. I understand that. Okay, now you were talking about auditing and all that, but yet and still, you were talking about data. Not once have you given any data to the CEO, Dennis Jha, to place up there for us to see the data. But yet and still, you are saying we are talking without data. My sister talked about Lamco. I was born in Bassa, lived in Buchanan, grew up in Buchanan, and we saw what Lamco did to our folks. If you live in Bomi Hills, how to call it, the LMC, and you go to Bomi Hills now and see what has become of that place. And if you want to go back to that and say those were our best days, then we have issues, serious issues. Go to Bon Mines and see what has happened, what our people have benefited from that. And when you look at what the international folks are saying, most of just on Mr. Lobbo here, his godfather, when Uncle Joe was the president of the Senate, under his watchful eyes, 66 of the 68 concession agreements that were signed were bogus. Basically, they were carved and divided among themselves. And when you look at it, you see George Noble's face is shining. He's looking good here. Most likely, 1% is in that thing that Uncle Joe, because Uncle Joe made it clear. I'm taking loan because I want my progenitors, I want my children, I want my forebearers to live a better life when I leave from here. Based on that, I want to believe that Joe Lobo sitting here, he's sitting real pretty. He's sitting real pretty. So he's a revisionist. He's here to revive. We're talking about the first. In everything that Joe we have done, he didn't touch any of that. Instead, he's taking us back to 2006, all the way to 2017. All the money. The UN report here says the World Bank, 16.5 billion US dollar went through the Liberian government from 2006 to 2017. You tell me 16.5 billion US dollar, and Joe Lobbo is telling me that appropriation and disbursement are not the same. So even though they would say $16.5 billion here, it's not what they got. But whatever they have, they didn't do anything with it. And you talk about corruption index. John Lobbo?
Yeah. 30 seconds, Jerome. 30 seconds and conclude, please.
Oh, I mean, Uncle Joe got to be very proud of Joe Lobbo. He's doing an excellent job. He's a revisionist. He's over here trying to smooth over the edges of the past administration. But good luck.
Thank you. Carl, will you not agree that after 12 years of appropriation on the renovation of the executive mansion, it didn't happen, and Judge Weah had done that? Will you not agree that this is unprecedented?
I don't agree. I think there was some renovation done and it's being complete. So to say that there was no renovation done, I think is a lie. And I think that, those of us that were in Liberia and saw the renovations, I've entered that building, more than one occasion during President Solis' administration. I think it was NSA or somebody like that at their office there. I've been in there. Robert's office was there. So whatever. I mean, I saw the renovations. This was a process. I think, the building, anyway, that's beside the point. I just don't see how people are making these arguments as if all the witnesses have died. I'm just sick of it. We're still here. We're still alive. We haven't gone anywhere. Things were documented. Is that all you wanted me to talk about? Can I respond to anything else?
Go ahead and respond to what else was said.
My greatest disappointment in the CDC government is in the people who are charged and paid, charged with the responsibility and paid, generously to execute President Weah's vision. These people are so disingenuous and so unpatriotic. It is not really, we all know that people have limitations, and certain times we have charismatic leaders that have limitations. But if the president gets up and he says, I declare tuition free for everyone, it is now the responsibility of the people that he's appointed to execute his vision correctly. They did nothing. They did nothing. Every time George Weah says he wants to do something positive for Liberia, the bootlickers, the overpaid, underperforming, unprepared, unpatriotic people that are surrounding the president, that are in positions of leadership, that are empowered to execute his vision, they are the true failures. And where I put the responsibility on Weah is he refuses to dismiss these people that are disgracing him repeatedly, time and time again. And even if you do not respect George Weah and you think he is not very smart or whatever, I have heard him say things that I'm like, oh, that would be a great idea. But he has a parade of incapable, unprepared, inexperienced, like people who lack the curiosity, lack the thirst, lack the self-determination to execute their freaking responsibilities correctly. And so even if Weah was to say, I would like, which he did, tuition to be free, whose job is it to make sure that that happens? And why are those people not fired? And so what you have is these guys come out, instead of doing their actual jobs, they come out and they say, oh, Weah has a vision for this. Weah has a vision for that. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to actually implement. All we have to do is pray, sing, and say, hey, the president wants to do this. You want George Weah to go sit down in the Ministry of Finance, in the Ministry of Education, at the University of Liberia board meetings and plan himself how to implement his vision? Instead of that being the concern of the CDC government, they're sitting there, oh, the president said it, so that's all that needs to happen. You know why they're doing that? Because they don't know that they're responsible to deliver. They don't know that they're supposed to do, that they have work to do. They don't know what they're supposed to do because a lot of these people have never even had real jobs before. They've never been responsible for anything before. So all they can do is praise sing and bootlick while the whole freaking ship is sinking. There's a gaping hole inside. And this is where we're going. So you want to continue to attack the past to try to distract from the incompetence of the present. It doesn't work that way. We have not died. We can read. History's documented. And what would be patriotic if you really love George Weah, if you really love CDC, implement the damn things that he says he's going to do. Get it done. Let's get it done. And stop singing about what you're imagining. I mean, they're having a dream and they're trying to sell this dream that they don't know how to accomplish. That's pathetic.
Thank you, Carl. And Lobbo, before you come in, I want Mr. Kunney to respond. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Kunney.
Yeah, I don't know. The tuition free for public university is not really a dream. It's a real policy that is in place. There are students at the University of Liberia and other public institutions that are not paying tuition. So that is not a dream. We can argue about the appropriate policy.
Funded, Mr. Kunney?
Huh?
Do you know how that is funded?
Well, we can argue the appropriate policy framework, but what I'm saying is there are actually students that go to the university. There is no tuition being paid at the University of Liberia. That's a fact. It's not a dream. It's not a dream. So I mean, we can, like I said, we can have all the policy arguments, but again, the position here is that this is unprecedented. This has never been done in our country before. To declare public institutions are free, and then you go to the other issues. Like let me just go back to the bicentennial thing. I don't know why we're having difficulty understanding this bicentennial thing. Basically, what the bicentennial is that, look, the whole idea of Liberia, the concept of Liberia as a nation state started with the arrival of the settlers. That's what the bicentennial is about. And let anybody come here and say before the settlers arrived, there was a Liberia. There was a land space there that was occupied by people, but were they called Liberians? Was that Liberia? We were in our little chiefdoms and kingdoms and things. It was not Liberia.
So Mr. Kunney, when was it called Liberia?
When the settlers arrived and they wanted to establish a country for
what year was it called Liberia? Is that what you're asking him? Because I don't think he knows what he's saying.
No, I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I know what I'm saying. I'm saying.
When was the place named Liberia?
I just gave you saying, I've already said 1822.
That's not true. That's not true. That is not true. It was not named Liberia in 1822. You see what I'm saying about this ill-advised misinformation?
Mr. Kunney ends. Mr. Kunney, go ahead.
That's not true.
When was
Dennis?
Yeah.
The process of Liberia as a nation state started with the arrival of the settlers on the shore of Liberia. There were people living in Liberia before them. Those people were not contemplating to name that place Liberia. Those who contemplated naming it Liberia were those that arrived and strived towards the goal of building a nation state that became independent 1847. So it
wasn't named in 1822.
Excuse me. The day of arrival is different from the date of independence. The bicentennial for the return. Well, you can laugh all you want. That's a historical fact. The bicentennial has to do with the date of arrival of the people.
The bicentennial of what?
Liberia. And the date of independence are two different things. I mean, if it is difficult for people to understand,
this is so funny to me. This is so funny to me. Dennis, you have to let me respond because there's young people watching.
Let's make sure Kunney is done. I want Kunney to finish. Mr. Kunney, go ahead and your thought.
So the bicentennial is simply the period where the settlers arrived, just like the history of the United States started with the arrival of the pilgrims from Europe. There were people living in America, but it was not called United States of America. The United States of America, as we know it today, started with the arrival of the pilgrims from Europe when they landed in New England. We are saying the story of Liberia as a nation state started with the arrival of the settlers. When they arrived, when they purchased their land and they started to interact with the indigenous people, that interaction led to the formation of the Republic of Liberia. It's an historical fact. That place was not called Liberia before the settlers arrived. Show the evidence.
It wasn't called Liberia when the settlers arrived.
Show the data that it was Liberia before the settlers arrived.
That's not the point. That's not the point. So here's the thing.
That's the point, because we're celebrating the foundation of Liberia. You say we should.
Okay, let me come in. We're not celebrating the foundation of Liberia. We're celebrating the arrival of the first group of repatriated Africans, which is fine. We should celebrate and commemorate. Let me talk. We should celebrate and commemorate it. But I'm not going to sit here on this platform while you misinform young people who are watching. When the repatriated Africans were sent basically on a reservation and under the control of the ACS, we alluded to this earlier, Liberia was not a country. Liberia was a settlement. It was a settlement, and it was being controlled by a private institution. And it was not one settlement. It was a series of settlements along the coast, including Maryland, including Mississippi in Africa, including, Bassa. And they each had their own governors. They each had their own rulers. They were independent of each other. So in 1822, that was not establishment of any state. For example, the United States of America does not commemorate their centennial based on the arrival of the Pilgrims. They do that for Thanksgiving Day, right? That's Thanksgiving Day that they celebrate. Their centennial was 1876. Their bicentennial was 1976. The only country, even racist South Africa did not commemorate its centennial on the anniversary of their settlers arriving. The most racist South Africa, the racist United States of America, does not commemorate the anniversary of their nation with the arrival of their settlers. The only country on the planet that does that is Australia. And the reason Australia does that is because it was initially structured to be a country. Even with the settlement of the prisoners, it was intended for them to start a state. 1, 2, the human beings, the Aboriginal people that the Australians met, they classified them as fauna, as animals. They classified them as animals, so they didn't even consider them as human beings. So as far as the Australian history is concerned, they were the first humans to arrive in Australia. This is why they celebrate their centennial with the arrival of their settlers, but no one else does that. They don't call it the centennial of the nation. Now, centennial, bicentennial just means 100, 200 years. The correct messaging should be, we're celebrating the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the arrival of the first repatriated Africans. There was no flag in 1822. The flag, the Constitution, the unity of the nation, the colonies were brought together under an umbrella in 1847, under that umbrella that we call the Liberian flag. Liberia did not exist as a country until 1847. That is when we had the audacity to exert our self-determination and self-rule. If you take that away from Hillary Teague, if you take that away from Elijah Johnson, if you take that away from those giants that had the courage to stand up to white supremacy and say, we are men and we will rule ourselves. If you take it away from them and give it to ACS and give it to Eli Ayers and give it to Stockton, you have wronged yourselves.
Right.
And this is the messaging that I would have expected to come out of this thing. But because you guys don't care to know about yourselves, you will sit there and support this misinformation. It's wrong. It's wrong, and I will say it today and any day. It's wrong.
Thank you, Paul. So, hold on, Mr. Kunney. Let's get this straight. So, in 1822, the settlers or the ex-slaves arrived. Mr. Kunney, you are saying that's the foundation, or that's the beginning?
That is the beginning of the Liberian story.
Of the Liberian story.
Yes. Yes, and that's what we celebrate.
And even though people started arriving long before that time, but the people that came long before that time, they never had the thought of forming a country called Liberia. So that's why you are not counting their arrival. Is that what I'm saying?
And this is why when the Liberian state was set up, Those people that you're talking about, they were excluded. They were not part of the Liberian state. The Liberian state was just a state 40 miles inland from the coastline. The people you're talking about, even my people were not excluded.
King Peter and the rest of the people were citizens, were Liberians, right?
No. Those who live with beyond 40 miles of the coastline were excluded from the Republic of Liberia. It was
why is that? Why were they excluded? Why were they excluded?
Because those places were referred to as the interior of Liberia. It took time for them to be incorporated into the Republic of Liberia.
It's because they had their own country. They had their own
Republic
country.
of Liberia, and so we're talking about the Republic of Liberia. What we're saying,
but don't say they were excluded. Don't say they were excluded. Say that there were other countries on the Green Coast.
What you call the Republic of Liberia today, it is not misinformation. It is historically correct. Before the settlers arrived, there was nothing called Republic of Liberia, and nothing was in the direction of forming the Republic of Liberia.
And before 1847, there was no Republic of Liberia. So Republic of Liberia started 1847. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but
who started it? Who started it? Because the settlers
it doesn't matter who started it. It matters when it started.
Listen, up to 1847. Up to 1847.
Okay, go on. Okay, let Jerome talk.
Okay.
1847, those who arrived 1822 set up Liberia in 1847. That is the beginning of the story of the nation.
They were not donated 1847. If you listen to the letter that was read by Donna Banks and the gift that came from Joe Biden to President Weah and the nation of Liberia, it says, and I quote, "I am including the original a copy of documents leading to the formation of the Republic of Liberia, and it is framed to be given to the Republic to President George Weah." That says here, it began, the settler arrived, it says here, January 7th, 1822 was the initial date. So everything, the archive of the United States, the national, the Congress here, we are saying the first 14 of that's why actually the theme of this particular bicentennial is the year of the return.
Okay.
So that, okay? So we are saying from the time that these young new folks set foot on that land, we begin to count. They started working from there. Their job of forming a state ended 1847, where they declared themselves. The flag, the Constitution, all of these things were not written on 1847. It was not written on that day. So you can't tell me it was the birthday, everything happens there. No, that was not the case.
All right.
Between 1822 to 1847, there's a lot that happened there. There's a lot of history that happened there.
The Commonwealth but thank you. We'll take a short break. When we come back, okay, we see that Wilmot and Jerome presented those unprecedented things, but Lobbo doesn't think so, right? So we'll see if Judge Weah did anything unprecedented. That will come when we come back.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
All right, welcome back. So, Mr. Lobbo, is there anything Judge Weah has done, in your view, that is unprecedented for which you can give him credit for the past 4 years?
You know, Dennis, I have to be real to the Liberian people. When you are elected president of the republic, your number one responsibility is to provide for your citizens. That is why you will always hear every president at the swearing-in ceremony. When you take an oath, you take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, providing security for your people, making sure that their lives are improved, uplifting their living standard becomes your responsibility. It is a pity and a shame that I will see my CDC brothers will be sitting here today, not articulating the accomplishment of President Weah and how those accomplishments has impacted the livelihood of our people. But I wanted to say this before we proceed, Mr. Jah.
Okay,
There's a
go
lot of
ahead.
things President Weah have done that I believe they are unprecedented. There are a lot of things. This is the only president to own his own church. Those are things, yes, it's unprecedented. I talk about his solo, his songs he have dropped, Mr. Liar Man, from one thing to another. He's the only president to obtain a black belt while in office, and now will soon be the next kung fu master. So he has done things that are unprecedented.
Are you
We
making
can speak.
fun?
Let me say something serious, Mr. C. You see, development should not be seen as a gift or a favor from a president to his people. It is your responsibility. There's a reason why he gets paid the amounts he gets paid. We hire him to do a job for us. So for me, I don't see that as a favor. But I want to make sure that I don't leave from here today in showing that our people are misinformed. I'm going to please take a time, Dennis. Mr. Kunney, you spoke on the World Bank report. Can you provide me that World Bank report number?
I quote that. I say you can search the
No,
World
the
Bank
World
report.
Bank report has a number. The World Bank, when they give a report, they do
Well,
have
I'm
a
giving
number.
you the year. I'm giving you the year. Check the year.
Just get the number. It's simple. Okay, so
my
we'll leave
man,
it.
I'm giving you a source.
Dennis Jah, in my hand, Mr. Kunney, take pen and paper. I will provide for you a World Bank report number that covers 2018, 2019. Here's the World Bank report number. It's 113720-LR. Look it up. Here's it right here. And I hope you find it and read it. Mr. Kunney agree with me. Let's just let me say this, Dennis. I thought he would really talk about roads. You agree that the World Bank report stated that over 695 kilometers of road have been paved. What you fail to understand, Mr. Kunney, is this. When roads are constructed, there is a duration period. A quota is expected from 15 to 30 years at most. In America, there's a reason why you see road construction. When a road lasts beyond 30 years, for the roads the Unity Party government inherited, it is saying that there were no roads in existence. Because, for example, those of us who used to leave from Monrovia going to Ganta, Mr. Kunney, I know you never saw what the road looked like. You never drove in central Monrovia. Those of us who were in Monrovia, I departed Monrovia, Liberia 2006. So you're absolutely agreeing with me. So let me tell you today, when you talk about, I didn't give you the data, I didn't give you the roads. Mr. Kunney, so if the Unity Party government, after 12 years, you are now agreeing that there's now 695 kilometers of paved road, that means you just said George Lobbo was correct. So why were you asking me?
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're completely wrong.
This is my third time speaking, so I've never interrupted you. Let me finish my thought. Let me help you, Mr. Kunney. You mentioned the road from Kakata to Bon Mines were never paved. It is true. Under the Unity Party government, it cost us $43 million. It is paved today. Should we say it never happened? We did it. Yes, it's true. The road from Yekepa to Senegal was never paved. Under the UP government, $46 million. We began the construction of that road, which we left today. You can celebrate. You want me to continue? Under the UP government, the road from Fishtown to Harper was paved. $42 million. It was a contract given to Chico. On March 27, 2017, we launched the phase 2 from Fishtown to River G at the cost of $108 million. Take pen and paper, put it down. You want me to continue for you? The entire roads in Monrovia and its surrounding were resurfaced. For the first time, we opened the road to Bella Yala. So we can go on and on. For us in the Unity Party, we didn't see that as Ellen doing us a favor. It was her job. It was our responsibility. We were supposed to build road because government is responsible to facilitate the movement of goods and services so that it enhances trade The goal of increasing trade is to expand the economy. What I was anticipating from you guys from the CDC today was to articulate how President Weah have improved the economy. Dennis John sent you something, or Anthony said. I would love for you guys to please put that graph so my CDC brothers can understand. So I can show to you the progress you've made. When we came to power, Mr. Kunney, let me help you today. The national poverty rate of Liberia was at 68.0%. When we left power, the national poverty rate of Liberia was at 50.4%. By the time you got to 2019, the national poverty rate had gone up to 54.5%. What I want to hear from you, it has been 4 years. You can state 5,000 jobs created under your government. You have not listed $10 million foreign direct investment. No, don't interrupt me. I have never done that. Let me finish.
Go ahead, Joe. Wrap it up.
Again, let me say this to you.
Let me bring Mohammed in.
No, let me quickly respond now.
It's taking me that surrogates of the government will sit here after being in power for 4 years, and all you want to brag about is a pronouncement of the president. I don't know why you left this out. Your president has been saying all over when he travels that he wants to make Liberia a hub. Why don't you list that? Same for you guys, pronouncement and accomplishment. Your president told us that he wanted to invest in tourism. His tourism budget is yet to cross 50,000. Let me give you something, Mr. Kunney. You were speaking in terms of the budget.
Just wrap it up, Lobbo.
Yeah, let me wrap up. No, Dennis, I've not spoken for a while. Mr. Gayman, let me say this to you. On the issue of the budget, let me help you with something, Mr. Gayman. Your CDC government in the 2019-2020 budget appropriated $665,000 for BWI. Guess how much they received? 45,000. 45,000.
Mr. Lobbo, where's the proof? I mean, you're rolling all of these. Where is the proof that
Mr. Gayman, I can't be responsible for you not having the information. I can't be here to feel you. I don't come to debate to provide.
Mr. Lobbo, just 30 seconds so we can respond.
I just gave you a report. Now you guys go read.
I have the same
Let me finish.
Quickly. Let me just take 30 seconds.
Are you guys going to keep interrupting me? Dennis,
hold on. Let Lobbo complete.
Nobody interrupting you. We just want to catch you a couple of lies.
Mr. Lobbo, 30 seconds so Kunney can come in. We are way out of time. We almost.
Mr. Kunney, Dennis, before I wrap this up, here's how I want to wrap this up. I want us to do another segment, Dennis. I will make myself available. I will take time from work on the issues that I'm speaking on so I can bring the dossiers for them to read because these informations are available. I want to bring for you statement from the Minister of Health on the issue of healthcare in terms of appropriation, or how much was allotted to hospitals like Phoebe that are yet to get even 50% of their own allotments. You are asking me about allotments. You've heard from every single senator that since the coming of the CDC government, that money that was appropriated in the national budget for county development, that no county have received their funding. And you're sitting here today asking me about appropriation.
Mr. John,
as I leave you today, please tell you that,
Mr.
C, then I will come. You can keep it. Listen,
you
don't like the fact.
How are you going to allow the
and this is why
and
I
talk
will
for an
leave
hour
this
without
conversation like this. I wish you guys would have come here today with information.
Thank you, Mr. Lobbo.
We'll see how well you have performed. But I will say, you guys did not do a good job, and I'm disappointed in you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Kunney.
Dennis, quickly. You see, the truth was, we created the environment where Lobbo was forced to speak the truth. On this platform, Lobbo has always presented that the United Party government paves 675 kilometers of roads. That has been his presentation. Today, he has amended that statement to mean that some of the why he been referring to that reconditioning of roads, it could not even be true that the United Party will pave 675 kilometers of road because such roads don't exist. Such roads don't exist. That thing don't exist. Samuel Doe built roads. William Aratobo built roads.
You have no point of
William
argument.
V.S. Thomas built roads. All the paved roads. They're not even more than 657 kilometers. So now he has amended his statement to mean that what he's been referring to all along is the reconditioning of existing roads that went by. I take that amendment. Let's go forward.
Thank you, Mr.
The road from
Mohammed.
Canada to Burma was reconditioned. The road from
Mr.
Christian to
Sherif,
Harvard was
let's get your thoughts so
reconditioned.
we can move on to something
man.
else.
No,
Yeah,
let's
so
not. Dennis, we have to set the facts.
Oh man, I'm
Hold
giving
on,
you
hold
good
on, hold on.
English. I'm quoting.
Oh, Mr. Sherif.
George Lobbo. I like George Lobbo. These guys. That's what they need.
Exactly.
That's what you see. He is the CDC medicine. So please, Dennis, bring him on every time.
That real CDC better do.
but seriously, I mean, so you look at what's going on time and again, Dennis. We've stated on this platform time and again what's going on wrong. You know where George Weah does his physicals? George Weah doesn't do his physicals in Monrovia. George Weah doesn't go to hospital in Monrovia. The CDC guys sitting here. See, this is the thing about Liberia, right? So you have individuals who are beneficiaries of the status quo. And as long as they are beneficiaries of the status quo, they will not care one bit about everyone else. Now, on our last show with Jerome, I commended him because, you talk about unprecedented moves. I mean, he shocked me on our last show because he was more independent minded. He was more middle of the road. He didn't told the same old CDC line. So he came in and actually deliver some point that, that shocked me. Unlike, his compatriot on the other side, who's always throwing the CDC line. Mr. Kunney, it's okay sometimes. It's okay to differ with George Weah, please. He's not going to do anything to you. So this idea that we should, the president is a king, he does nothing wrong. See, this is what Liberian people are doing right now. It's very, very dangerous. Already, people are saying, Dennis, that they're not even talking about 2023 anymore. They're talking about 2029. That is dangerous. That is troubling. So when you begin to hear that, voices of reason must speak up. Because what is going through his head right now is, oh yeah, these people, we're not even talking about 2023. Somebody said that, look, young man, we're not talking about 2020. We want 2029. Okay, we want to change the law so that 2029, we will carry you again. You can't begin to do these things. It's undemocratic. It is wrong. It is dangerous. So I want to tell everybody that is supporting the CDC, it is okay to differ with George Weah once in a while. Once in a while, once in the blue moon. It is okay.
Mr. Sherif, it's also okay to state the good thing George Weah is doing once in a while.
It is okay. But what have you heard from me tonight, Dennis? What you've heard from me tonight is a real middle of the road independent voice. But these guys are not going to acknowledge anything like that as long as you're not 100% in George Weah's corner. And it's dangerous. It's not, we don't live in a world where it's you have to be for me, otherwise you're against me. And this is exactly how George Weah thinks. And this is exactly how most of his supporters, at least the higher ups in his ranks, that's how most of them think. You're either with him or you're against him. Never mind anything else. So yes, I agree with you. Once in a while, it's fine to acknowledge some of the things that he has done right. I mean, I've said that on this platform time and time and again. And all of us, and by the way, I think all of us on this platform are in agreement that George Weah is someone that that we admire as far as his talents as an athlete. This is a guy we used to Dennis, when we where do we used to go to watch games? We used to go to these video clubs, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
We used to line up, Liberians, Guineans, other Africans who they wanted to see. They wanted to see George Weah. So
when you, Mr. Sherif, let me bring in a few comments that will kind of stimulate the discussion as well.
Please let me
Oh,
respond. Okay,
hold on, Jerome. You can. James Zola said, just like Lobbo when the UP was in power, he never saw anything wrong in the UP government that he wants us to vote for JNB. Say, then Alexander Boniface Hayes, let me ask Wilmot Kunney and Jerome Gayman, why do people leave one relationship to the other? Do you leave one relationship to compare for a change? Those are your questions. Unbreakable say, Mohammed, you are absolutely correct. Seditions are a bunch of hypocrites. Someone say Ellie and Joe used to do their physical in Liberia. That's what Jabara Sherif is saying. Crisco Masale, 4 years ago to 5 years, CDC government is still shifting blame. They were protesting for 12 years that they could do better, only to come in and shift blames. Mr. Gayman.
First of all, Mr. Lobbo, like I say, you cannot revisit the past. You cannot correct what you did wrong. And to my sister over here, when we talk about public policy, she talks about the competence and the incompetence of those who are in power now. When Ellen Johnson Sirleaf came to power, when they listed her cabinet minister, even I went to RB Toe and I said, Toe, this is an A team. If this team does not deliver Liberia, we are in trouble. That A team was the best, according to them, the best and the brightest that Liberia had to offer, including my sister Kawi here. They were all part of that administration. And what happened? They became labeled as one of the worst of all time, the most corrupt. President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf even admitted that her son stole $30 million from the NOCAP, and she said, "I take full responsibility." we talk about corruption and it's on steroid. We talk about 68 concession agreement, and John Lobbo and his godfather, Sleepy Joe. In fact, Sleepy Joe said during one of the debates that George Weah was a bobo senator that never voted in the House, and George Weah smartly retorted and said, "You would have never known because you slept the whole while, so you didn't know who had voted." So these are the things we are talking about. President Weah.
You want to find anything pull anything out of the hat now?
No, I'm just here. These are factual stuff. We are talking about even the 4-lane highway. I was just on the World Bank website here, and they are talking about, when I spoke with Bishop Warner the last time, we talked about primary and secondary road. And I asked him, I said, "Do we have any primary roads in Liberia?" He said no. And then the World Bank just defined what a primary road is. It's a 4-lane highway. Liberia has only one. And that one 4-lane highway was actually dedicated under President George Weah. That's another unprecedented historical event that's happened. So when we are talking about...
We don't have a 4-lane highway in the country.
Excuse me?
Thank you. And your thought. We want to move to another.
We don't have a 4-lane.
We have a 4-lane boulevard. It's a road. It's an urban road. It's not a highway. That's not what a highway is.
Whatever that is, it is the first 4-lane highway.
Yeah, but
we have had in Liberia. That's what the world.
It was designed by Talbert. The Somalia Drive. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the Japanese freeway.
The Japanese
Somalia Drive. The Somalia Drive was designed by Talbert, and it was designed as 4 roads. It's not a highway.
We are not talking about
the UP government projects.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to go to more unprecedented things, and I'll get your response. But now,
can I respond quick, Dennis, in 1 minute to Mr. Kunney, something he said about NOCA? Let me respond quick.
No, we're done with that. We want to go to our next section.
Dennis, 1 second is very important.
I didn't talk anything about NOCA, man. What my name to
Dennis, please, 1 second. Mr. Kunney, no, 1 second, Dennis. It is important that Liberia know the fact. There was an audit conducted by the CDC government, which was done by Undubusi Unwambodike, appointed by President George Weah. So for seditious to still be asking about Noka, that is to prove their level of dishonesty. What you should do, Mr. Kunney, and my good friend Gayman, is to muster the courage and ask your president what has he done with that report. Okay? You did an audit at Noka, so I don't want to hear you talk about it again until you people can act upon the report you have. You conducted an audit. So there's notion that you people keep lying that you didn't audit the UP government. You audited the Ministry of Agriculture. Can you tell the Liberians what you've done with it? Nothing. Can you tell them what you did with the $25 million audit? Nothing. The $16 billion? Nothing. What have you done?
Mr. John, what did Ellie say about the $30 million?
Just making up stories.
What did Ellie say about the $30 million and her son?
All right. This time we're going to go to our next section.
It's too late, baby. Go to bed. I don't need your tabata. Baby, oh, your tabata. I gotta go away. Your tabata. My baby, oh, I don't need your tabata. My baby, oh.
At this time, we come to one of our exciting moments in the show is the Tabata moment. Anything throughout the week that is the biggest Tabata that you've learned for the week, please say it now or forever hold your peace. Let me start with Mr. Kunney.
You know, the Tabata of the week, to be honest with you, for my own Papa Jose Yuman Boaka to have gone to the executive mansion, participated in the pomp and pageantry of that day, and go back to the Unity Party office and accuse President Weah of throwing party that he himself attended. I think it's a complete Tabata. He attended the party, he enjoyed himself, he was there. And then to go to a Unity Party office and accuse the president of hosting parties, I think it smells, a little bit. I think that's the Tabata for the week.
Call.
Oh, so many. I will say that I will select the opening ceremony for the bicentennial of the arrival of the American Colonization Society to Liberia or to the Grain Coast, and negotiating land with sovereign Africans who were sovereign, free, running their own states, their own nations. The fact that we had all of these grown men and women organizing events, they never once, I haven't seen any historical commemoration where names of people were not mentioned. They didn't quote anyone. They did not explain the process and even who the people were that arrived. They didn't know that, majority of the people that were on both the Elizabeth and the Nautilus that arrived in Sierra Leone never made it to Liberia, right? They went in, it was just a buffoon, they had a replica of the Elizabeth as if it took people to Liberia, which it did not. They had, so much historical misinformation. And it was embarrassing. They didn't even know that there were two ships, both the Nautilus and the Elizabeth, landed in what is now Sierra Leone, and they were later transferred to Cape Mesurado after Eli Ayers and Captain Stockton went and negotiated with sovereign Africans for land. They didn't even know that. And then they didn't explain anything. They didn't explain, what Elijah Johnson and Hillary Teague had to say. These people could read and write. They didn't quote them. They didn't talk about, the reasons for the repatriation of African people, mostly recaptured Africans that were not even born in America, that were in that for initial two voyages. They didn't know any of that. They didn't talk about it. And that's a problem. It was embarrassing. And that was the greatest Tabata. I think they just wanted to throw a party. They wanted to throw a party and they missed an opportunity to educate the country and bring awareness. And no, our country was not established in 1822. It was established in 1847. There was a Republic of Maryland in 1834. In 1834, Maryland's independence was a catalyst for our total independence of all the colonies. But Maryland's independence was predicated on the fact that they were being bullied by the British because they were not a country. They were not a country. They were being bullied and they were not allowed to tax. They were not allowed to control their shores. They were not allowed to control trade. And so they asserted their independence. And it is the same reason that Liberia asserted its independence. And so you can't have it both ways. And the fact that people halfway learn history, they only read elementary school history written by Doris Banks Henrys, is the reason why we made fools of ourselves. So the greatest Tabata was that foolery that occurred, that big party. I mean, they look like they had fun, but to call that a historic commemoration is a disgrace to Liberia.
Thank you.
And the
Jerome?
greatest Tabata.
Jerome, what's your Tabata of the week?
Well, one of the things that I think we all should agree to here, the greatest Tabata took place this week in Grand Bassa County, and it is something that should capture our attention. It has something to do with national security. This week, Musa Ability and his crew were attacked in Grand Bassa County, and the chant that were going on was, "Go back to ACO." ACO is the party of the Muslims and the Mandingos. You are not allowed in Grand Bassa County. Our cheerleader said we should arrest you or your car or his car and return it as long as it has Liberty Party's logo on it. It doesn't matter who purchased it. It belongs to the Bassa people. I think this is a national security issue. I think the government should take it seriously. We do not have our Liberian state based on tribal lines or based on religious lines. Nobody should impede another citizen and tell them go back to Akko, where the Mandingo and the Muslim people belong. It is terrible, and I think we all should condemn that. I think that is the greatest Tabata that I see that had the propensity of bringing our country into another chaos.
Yes, correct. Mohammed?
Yeah, so kudos to you there, Jerome. That is excellent. And for a country that graduated from a civil war, these things have the propensity of just bringing us back to back down to earth. And so all of the gains that we've been talking about, would just be erased. So let's pray and hope that that level has prevailed. So my Tabata of the week is it probably is something that's related to the past couple of weeks, what has gone on with Avaz and his book, along with his co-author. So I read the famous or infamous chapter 13 of that book. And so for the Minister of Gender to call a meeting to condemn this, I mean, this is beyond comprehension. This president is the one allegedly who put Liberian women down, and Liberian women should be outraged and demand answers from the president of the Republic of Liberia. Instead, what we are seeing is Liberian women are parading the streets of Monrovia. The gender minister is calling an unnecessary press conference to condemn the book, to condemn the authors. So to me, that's the greatest Tabata. And mind you, a lot of these folks haven't read that book.
Yeah.
They haven't read that chapter. And it's demeaning. Look, it's demeaning to Liberian women. But who did it? George Weah allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Did it. He hasn't said anything, Dennis. He hasn't said anything. He flew to Belgium the other day. He hasn't said anything. He comes back and, he's not saying anything. So we need to hear something.
Thank you. Mr. Lobbo.
Also, Dennis, I think the greatest Tabata to me, from what I've observed, was this whole bicentennial. President Weah full display of his limitation in that video, welcoming people to the event. And at the end, we'll say, George Weah, I am Liberia. That is, I asked myself if President Weah ever took history classes. How can President Weah be Liberia? Liberia is a country with a population over almost 5 million people, 15 counties. I thought my CDC brothers here would have come out to even help their president. But again, I understand President Weah have told the Liberian people that growing up he has serious reading disabilities, so he really don't read. He told us he know math, but so I would say, Dennis, for me to hear the president, the chief diplomat of the republic, would say he is the country. I just thought that President Weah, you can't display any amount of limitation at that level. And
Thank
another
you.
thing, Dennis, in addition to that, was to hear the U.S. statement, the U.S. government, Biden's representative, on the issue of corruption. I think if you were in this government as a government official, the message was very, very clear. Given what we already know, I think while you were celebrating, they were just telling you that your enjoyment might not last. So you can
Thank
drink
you.
all you want now, but I hope you know. So I think, but yet then the CDC boys for them, they said they came to celebrate. So for them, nothing bothers them. As long as they can celebrate, once they can march, that's all it's about. So they were having fun.
Thank you. From Cooper Kunney, you say, I'm Dr. George Weah, I'm Liberia. This sounds like the greatest Tabata. So you and Cooper are on the same wavelength there.
I just wanted to be sure I didn't lie.
Alexander Hayes said, the biggest Tabata for me tonight is Jerome Gayman telling George Lobbo not to blame the past government for he blaming Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. For me, my Tabata is when I saw in Monrovia, somewhere around Pinsville area, that they say someone accused of stealing a motorbike was burned to ashes. And you could see children and little children, people around that body, that burned body. Whether that was the real person, mob justice, to me, that hurt. Let me just open the phone line for at least two callers here. Let me take the first caller here. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
My name is Margaret. I'm calling from Georgia.
Margaret, go alive. You are live?
Okay. I want to talk about, let me go, my topic for tonight is Karu and contrast to Jerome. Jerome, what you saw in Grand Bassa County is just what we're talking about here. We come on these podcasts and we stay here and we make fun. We laugh at what is going on in our country. Rose, argument. Being the medicine man for Rose. They are all just meaningful cliches. You know that once they land on the wrong ear, we have people like this on the laughing because you speak good English to call you Conga. So they're going to take it from there, saying he's a Muslim man, he should not come to Grand Bassa. These are the things we are talking about. When those things land on the uneducated electorate, we muddy the water for the next election. And this causes the weird of this world to continue their nonsense. They're blatant inexcusable disrespect for Mama Liberia. This is what's happening. People honor the life when you come under these lives, these meaningful, these educational podcasts. When you're there, you here to learn and listen. Listen to these panelists tonight. They gave us a thing for us to learn from. But we are only there with cursing at people because the woman speaks English and who is she? And you're doing the Congo thing again. And that is so wrong. Just we didn't do anything for me. His voice always is good. For me, he has made only 40%. 40%. Only because Liberia still own Liberia. That's why he gets 40%. The rest of it, nothing. Because today in Liberia, two young men were served jungle justice. That's one of the person we're talking there today. Going to Etch. There's a young man there too, brutally beaten, brutalized. One of the main important things of government supposed to get the citizens. George Weah has not been able to do that. It's security. He tells them, your own city camera.
Thank you, Marco.
That is wrong. That is my point here tonight. We shouldn't come on these places here and be laughing and joking. Our country is in dire need of help. Thank you, Cole. Thank you, everyone. I must admit, every one of you did great, even Jerome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, that's a shot.
Let's go around the room, 1 minute each. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the show tonight. I know the show, the unprecedented moves of President Weah, whether or not we agree that those things made his name to be in the annal of history, that remains to be seen. Let's go around the room and let me hear your final thoughts. Let me start with Mr. Mohammed Sherif.
Yeah, so Dennis, so my final thought, and I still think about what Jerome just said, and it really touched me in a very special way. At the onset of the Liberian Civil War, there were disturbing comments made by individuals in the street. So you walk down the street and you're a Mandingo person, and you hear people say, "We're going to send them back home. We're going to take their houses. We're going to take their kids and their wives and their properties." I heard these things. We heard these things. But people thought at the time that this was just limited to a particular group of people called Mandingos, and so nobody thought that this sort of dangerous, these dangerous rhetoric, the danger was going to come on all of us, and so that this is happening. It's incumbent upon all of us to condemn this, and not only to condemn this, but stand up for justice, stand up for the right thing. The right thing is that we cannot continue to do the things that we did in the past that led to our national calamity. And so, Liberia is for all of us. People know that the Mandingo people are not going anywhere, right? I mean, we're in a lot of West African countries, and we're in Liberia. We're not going anywhere. Liberia is for all of us. And so these people have to understand that Musa Ability has never been a member of ACO. I mean, so what are they talking about? It's a lot of Mandingo people out there that are not part of ACO. ACO is not a Mandingo party. ACO has other ethnic groups as well. It's in fact, when Professor Kromah ran the first time in 1997, ACO, the vice senator bearer was someone from I believe Grand Bassa County who was a pastor, a woman. I think she was a pastor. I believe I forgot her name now, but that's how it was then. So I don't think that people should continue to tribalize our politics. We are already divided enough. Our politics should not be divided. And so I want to end by also recognizing Jerome started off with we lost Dr. Amos Sawyer. Condolences to his family. We also lost in the last week or so Professor Alhaji Kromah. Alhaji Kromah is someone that taught me at the University of Liberia before the Civil War. And so, we've lost these Liberians, these great Liberians, and condolences to their families and their loved ones.
Thank you so much. This one coming from Michael Kessley. My tabata for of the week is the idea that the Senate voted that Samuka's seat is vacant. Mr. Gayman, your final passing comments. Let's use 1 minute each. We are way out of time.
Oh yeah, I won't even take that time. I want to thank Mr. Lobbo. I want to thank Mr. Sherif. Obviously, our own able analyst, Mrs. Family, and our statesman, women. I just wanted to send this message to my sister from Grand Bassa County, the Senator Nyobli Kanga. She needs to strongly disassociate, distance herself from what's happening because her name is being used. And then yesterday, I spoke with her chief of staff, a gentleman by the name of Gibson. He said it and he confirmed it. He says, quote, and on court, he says, we may have lost the battle in the court to Musa Ability, but we will find him guilty in the court of public opinion, and this is where we're going to fight the battle. So if he is working directly with the senator and saying these things, I think the senator needs to come out, disassociate, condemn what's happening, so our county can once more return. The Liberty Party was a party that Honorable Bronsky used to say, a party of law and order. This is not how we behave. This is not how Bassa people behave. This is uncivilized. And I think she needs to distance herself from it.
Thank you. Mr. Lobbo?
I want to say thanks to the Focus on Liberia family. Let me thank my fellow panelists, Sis Cole, and Mr. Sherif, my two CDC strongmen, Weah Kunney and Jerome Gayman. I want to say thank you very much. I look forward to more engagement with you guys. But I will also like to take this time to advise the two of you. Next time you come in, maybe you guys should do a better job because I really think you guys didn't do well from that perspective. So maybe you guys can try again. Let Dennis schedule it. I will come back. I want to thank our callers, but and our viewers. Let me say this: if we're going to build a civil society, I read some of the comments, especially one that were directed towards his code. I want focus on Liberia to look at that, make sure that person gets black. We can't continue on this level of disrespect and intolerance against each other. You have your right to your opinion. You have the right to disagree with any one of us here. You see, all of us here, we don't agree, but we have to be civil and be respectful to everyone here. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, which we will protect. On this note, I want to say thanks to all of you once again. I look forward to a fruitful conversation, and I hope my fellow citizens can bring something of substance, especially one that is directly improving the living standard of our people. That is what I'll be looking forward to. I take that debate any given day, anywhere.
Thank you.
Call me.
Darling, what would say my Tabata of the week is seeing a group of CDC older women with hunger written on their faces sitting on the sidewalk. Mr. Kunney, someone has suggested say call should be the last, so I honor that. Go ahead,
Okay,
Mr.
and
Kunney.
I don't have a problem with that. As I indicated from the onset of the show, this was really going to be an easy assignment. The mission was to point out things that are unprecedented action taken by Judge Weah that if he continues on that trend, that will place him in the annals of Liberian history. And we made that presentation very brilliantly, despite the braggadocio from my little brother, Judge Lobbo. There has been no contrary information to the fact that Judge Weah is the only president in Liberian history that has introduced free tuition at public universities and colleges. There is no argument to the fact that Judge Weah is the only sitting Liberian president that sought to reduce his own terms in office. There is no argument to the fact that Judge Weah signed the Abdul Kamara Freedom Act decriminalizing free speech. There is no argument that Judge Weah has done all of these things, which there's no argument that Judge Weah, unlike other presidents, have shown an incredible commitment to not only continue his own road projects, but to also continue projects from previous administration. No one has contested that. So I don't know where this whole data thing is coming from. We made this as a statement of fact, and no one here contradicted us to say, oh no, there was a president named President Day who did what Judge Weah did. So I think on that note, if Judge Weah continue in that direction, his name will actually be placed in Liberian history. Now we can have another debate on the completeness of these policies, the impact of these policies, and we can have that debate. But the completion of the Somalia Drive Freeway is benefiting the people of Liberia, people driving freely on that highway. The tuition free at the University of Liberia, thousands of Liberian children attending not only the University of Liberia, but other public universities. So these policies have positive impact on the Liberian people. The fact that all of these things will be codified soon, or maybe codified by maybe another administration, that's how society develops. One a policy is put into place today, the next administration comes, they build on that policy. The key example, we are still building on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. We build on Social Security. We are building on Medicare. There is no public policy that can the very first time and capture everything. But let us acknowledge that President Weah is the first to introduce some of these policies. And if they continue, definitely his name will be in the annals of Liberian history. No fact that contradicted that tonight.
Thank you. Last, G. Suarez Sape said, Lobbo, the greatest tabata is your understanding of the president's statement, I am Liberia. Carl, your final thoughts. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. So much to unpack, but I think the discussion around, the miseducation system in Liberia, and the fact that we are sitting on a panel with normal day people, like myself, that were educated somewhat before the war, that don't even know our basic history, is tragic, because it is history that gives a country its identity. It is history that gives a country its self-esteem and its reason, its foundation to build on. If we took it more seriously and understood it and paid more attention to it, we'd be more informed political activists, politicians, whatever it is that people want to do. The first responsibility of a political activist is to be informed, is to be educated about the country that you're trying to save. You have politicians in Liberia, you have activists, you have members of political parties that fail to articulate correctly their past, their recent past, their origins, and it's tragic. It's tragic for me to sit with people who are my elder brothers, and they're making statements about Liberia being established in 1822 when there's documents. For God's sakes, we have access to information. So my goal with our organization, with the Liberian History Guild, is to make information available at no cost by digitizing things that are available in various libraries, so that people have access to just basic information about their country. Liberian history is beautiful. It's well documented. It is a positive story. It's not something to hide. It's not something to dismiss. It's something that we should be proud of. In closing, I'm going to say this. Liberia, the 1847, even the Maryland Declaration of Independence, which preceded the Republic, we have to remember that there were multiple colonies, separate colonies with different names. The name Liberia did not refer to all of the colonies. It only referred to the settlement at Cape Mesurado. That's the first thing. So we have to understand that. And I think that's also confused in people's minds. And even that settlement at Cape Mesurado, that was named in 1824. There was no Liberian flag in 1822. The name Liberia hadn't been given in 1822. So 2022 cannot be the Liberia bicentennial. Tubman, when understood this is why we celebrated our centennial in 1847. When Charles D.B. King was president in 1922, he did not have a centennial for Liberia, because even the True Whig Party understood that the country began in 1847 when they asserted their independence. Centennial Pavilion was not built in 1922. It was built in 1947. We had a centennial celebration that lasted for 2 years, from 1947 to 1948 to 1949, December, when it ended, and it involved the entire world. This is something that we need to understand, that we've made a mistake. We shouldn't be trying to justify it. Our children are watching.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have one more Tabata here before we close, because the people love this Tabata session. So before we close, if I can find it, this one from Vakabinet Toure. My Tabata of the week is JNB ill-advised, quitting and further dashing the hope and aspiration of Liberians who felt CPP was a viable alternative to unseating President George Manneh Weah. Well, tomorrow, my man Anthony Sia is going to be here with the Hour of Politics. He's going to take a critical and analytical look at Mr. Bwakai's press statement. His analysis coming tomorrow at 12 noon. You don't want to miss it. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to also thank our viewers for watching the show. Always, don't forget, if you want to send money to Liberia or anywhere else, use Kana Cash. Thank you so much. Let's do this again, because it looked like Mr. Kunney had more unprecedented move by President Weah. So we may have time to.
I added to that list, Dennis. I even gave him.
I call it down.
You call it down. It was about 15.
More.
You either hit black belt there.
Lobbo.
So thank you so much.
Lobbo had a heart attack today.
We want to thank our viewers for watching, even those who will watch later. Always keep it here on Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Tomorrow, also, you're going to watch the Literary Hour. They're going to be talking about patriotism and nationalism on the Literary Hour. You don't want to miss it. Scholar Jackie Sire and Professor K. Moses Nambe. Until then, from all of us at Focus on Liberia Tough Talking Thursday, we say good night and God bless you.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.